Harder for laughing at my stupid jokes.
Well, I'm joining you today, Chair.
Excellent.
Only halfway, though, unfortunately.
Oh, it's all right. Okay, everybody ready? Room's ready? We'll go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 33rd meeting of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage. Now, pursuant to Standing Order of Reference Tuesday, or Order of Reference, February 16th, a motion adopted by the committee on Monday, May 10th, the committee resumes consideration of Bill C-10, an act to amend the Broadcasting Act and to make related and consequential amendments to other acts. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. As you can see across the screen, again, I ask for your patience as we try to deal with this. Please only speak when recognized. Talking over each other serves under normal circumstances. It doesn't serve well. And of course, being in a hybrid situation or a virtual situation, it makes it even worse. So I ask for your patience. That being said, also one final rule I neglected to mention last time, that is screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted, please. So one final warning, we are televised today. So hope you are sounding and looking your best as we get on with our meeting. As you know, thanks to a motion, we have appearing before us right now, we have the Honorable Stephen Guilbeault, who is the Minister of Canadian Heritage regarding C-10. Also from the Department of Canadian Heritage, we have Thomas Owen Ripley, who's the Director General, Broadcasting, Copyright and Creative Marketplace. Drew Olson, who's Senior Director, Marketplace and Legislative Policy. Now, from the Department of Justice, we invited the Minister of Justice. We received correspondence, and we've been advised that Minister Lametti respectfully declines the invitation. However, we do have from the Department of Justice, Nathalie Drouin, who's the Deputy Minister of Justice and Deputy Attorney General of Canada, Sarah Gay, who's the Director General, Human Rights Law Section, and we also have Michael Kimzel, who's the Legal Counsel, also from Canadian Heritage. So that being said, we go back to our original format of witnesses. What we normally do is we allow the chief witness up to 10 minutes to speak, and then we have questions and comments from members of the committee following that, based on our old regime, our old order of precedence when it comes to questions. Now, Mr. Waugh, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and you alluded to it. I want to thank, first of all, the Minister of Canadian Heritage for appearing here today as instructed, and I want to thank the Justice Committee also, but, we did have on Monday, May 10th, as you know, we had from the Liberal side, Mr. Housefather's motion, and I sub-amended it, that we would get the Minister of Justice to also attend. Thank you to the officials of Justice, but all 11 of us agreed in a unanimous motion that the Minister of Justice would also appear in this committee. So I'm not going to take up further time. I'm just going to flag it now. But for second hour, we certainly would like to discuss this because it was unanimous motion by all parties. We all agreed that we would get the Canadian Heritage Minister and the Minister of Justice to come before we do the panel. So we have welcomed the Minister of Canadian Heritage here today. Maybe he wants to extend his stay for a few minutes because of my interjection. But at the same time, I want to hear what he has to say. We all want to hear what he has to say, but we are disappointed that the Minister of Justice, as you said, turned down our request, and it was a unanimous motion. So I want us to think about this and how in the second hour we are going to deal with this. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Waugh, for the inputs. I will receive direction at that point from the committee, but chooses to provide me the direction regarding that situation you just pointed out with the Minister of Justice. In the meantime, we have the Minister for 1 hour, and I'm going to let him begin now with his comments. And again, Mr. Minister, welcome back, and you have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm joining you from Montreal on the traditional lands of the Mohawk and other Haudenosaunee peoples. I am pleased to appear before you to discuss Bill C-10, the Minister of Justice's charter statement, and the impact of your committee's amendments to Bill C-10.
Je suis accompagné des
With me, I have officials from my department, who you named, as well as senior officials from the Department of Justice. I'm delighted to contribute to a review of the bill. I would like to begin by thanking this committee for its important work to date.
Depuis le dépôt du
Since Bill C-10 was introduced, the cultural sector, broadcasters, and experts have given us, and you too, I'm sure, much food for thought. They have provided input and support on updating the Broadcasting Act across the country. Our broadcasters, our production sector, and the culture sector as a whole are counting on this new legislative tool to continue to flourish on digital platforms. They are counting on this tool to level the playing field between conventional broadcasters and digital platforms. In other words, the bill is about restoring a balance that the arrival of the web giants has skewed very seriously in their own favor at the expense of local people and businesses.
the Act. Within a few years, our creators, artists, and musicians risk losing up to $1 billion annually. However, if we move forward with Bill C-10, the Department of Canadian Heritage predicts that by 2023, online broadcasters could be contributing up to $830 million per year to Canadian content and creators. Let's remember that the audiovisual and interactive media industry employs nearly 160,000 Canadians every year. According to the 2016 census, the median annual income for core artist groups such as musicians, singers, authors, writers, producers, and directors was only $24,300, which is well below the $43,500 median for all workers. De plus, cette industrie
To make matters worse, this industry is still suffering from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the years to come, the positive impacts of C-10 will stimulate industry growth and increase the visibility of our stories and our artists. Canadians also support this initiative. More than 7 out of 10 Canadians feel that more needs to be done to promote Canadian and Quebec audiovisual content in the country, and almost half say that this content is not easy to find.
And although some view that any type of regulation for web giants is too much, a majority of Canadians believe that we must act. 78% of Canadians agree that streamers need the same rules as Canadian broadcasters. 81% support the principle that Facebook and Google should pay more for news. 83% support some form of accountability for these companies for the content shared on their platform. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, the first objective of the bill is to ensure equity between conventional and digital broadcasters, and to ensure that social media platforms that act as broadcasters are also contributing to our cultural industry. Another objective is to promote Canadian cultural expression in all its diversity, including that of Indigenous and racialized communities.
l'objectif n'est
The goal is not to regulate content generated by users, such as videos of our children, friends, and colleagues. It never was, and it never will be. One thing is clear. More and more Canadians are listening to their favorite music and artists on social media. Right now, YouTube is the most popular online music listening service in the country. The witnesses who have appeared before this committee showed that Section 4.1, as drafted in the original version of Bill C-10, could allow social media platforms to get away with just about anything. They also demonstrated that Section 4.1 did not take into account how these types of services are used to deliver professional content, like that broadcast by recording studios, while other online businesses would be required to contribute to the objectives of the Broadcasting Act, social media platforms would not. How then could we justify imposing obligations on Spotify, Apple Music, or Cube Music, but not on YouTube, a Google subsidiary? After the second reading of the bill, all opposition parties, including the Conservatives, criticized that social media was not covered under this legislation. Examples.
Number 19, Conservative MP from Saskatoon Grassroots, Mr. Waugh, told the House of Commons, and I quote, "It is deeply disappointing that the government's proposal are so incredibly lacking. I'm going to focus on 4 points today. First, the legislation does nothing to address social media companies, such as Facebook and Google, and their various properties, such as YouTube, to pay its fair share, end of quote. On March 26, he also added, again, beginning of quote, to the Professional Music Publishers Association, you're right on about YouTube. It's not regulated in Bill C-10, and everybody's using YouTube. We're going to have an issue. As you pointed out correctly, this should be regulated, and it's not. End of quote. C'est donc sans surprise que le 20...
Therefore, on April 23rd, it was not a surprise that a majority of committee members agreed, including the NDP and Bloc Québécois, agreed that 4.1 should be withdrawn on the basis that the CRTC's powers with respect to social media platforms would subsequently be restricted. These platforms are very different from conventional broadcasters.
The amendments proposed by my parliamentary secretary last week limit the CRTC's power to three main requirements. Number one, platforms must provide information about their revenues. Number two, they must contribute financially to the Canadian cultural ecosystem. And finally, they must increase the visibility of Canadian creators. All of this would be done without ever preventing anyone from putting their own content online and sharing it, or forcing anyone to watch anything against their will. In other words, you and I, like all Canadians, would continue to enjoy the same freedom online that we do now. I've said it before, and I will say it again. We're not targeting individuals. We are targeting the web giants, which are almost all American companies. Our goal is simple, to get these multi-billion-dollar companies that generate hundreds of millions of dollars in Canada every year to do their part to make sure our creators and artists are better paid and more visible online. We must remember that Canadian radio, television, and cable companies have been subject to similar obligations for more than 50 years. In the spirit of fairness, Bill C-10 would extend these obligations to streaming services and social media platforms when they act as broadcasters. Dans un esprit d'équité,
in the interest of fairness, this would be imposed on social media platforms when they act as broadcasters. Bill C-10 recognizes that there is a large diversity of digital business models, and it provides ample flexibility to craft common sense rules that will evolve over time as technology changes and as Canadians' habits for accessing culture change.
mais je le dis et je le répète.
Once again, let me be clear, there is no question of censoring what individuals post on social media. I would also like to point out that the Minister of Justice, in his updated analysis of Bill C-10, as amended by the committee and with amendments, confirms that the bill is still consistent with the Charter. Mr. Chair, the Internet is dominated by a few massive American companies whose algorithms dictate what we see, hear, and consume. We are inundated with their information. Many of our artists and creators, especially Francophones, Indigenous, and racialized people, have a hard time being heard in their language and culture.
Bill C-10 wants to give more visibility to these artists and creators to ensure a greater diversity of voices and perspectives, to counter homogenization, and to assert our cultural sovereignty over foreign companies that are only accountable to their shareholders. I hope the committee will resume its work and quickly move Bill C-10 back to the House of Commons. As always, I would be delighted to support you in your work. I look forward to answering your questions. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister.
Merci.
Questions. We're going to start off with our members from the Conservative Party, and I believe, Mr. Reyes, you are going first.
Oui, merci.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister for being with us and to the senior officials to answer all of our questions. As my colleague Mr. Waugh said, we are, however, very disappointed to see that the Minister of Justice is not here, despite our invitation. I think that we will come back to this after, so as not to use up the time we have with you, Mr. Minister. I have a very simple question to start, and I hope you will give me a short answer. Are you for or against net neutrality?
Je suis pour.
I am for it. Perfect. That's a good answer. because the Prime Minister also said that he would fight tooth and nail to defend it. Your predecessor, Ms. Joly, also said it in her cultural document that she tabled when she was at the Heritage Department. The definition of net neutrality is to guarantee fairness in all data online. One expert said that this was a crucial issue of our time, just as important as freedom of expression and speech. Minister Lemedi said, it's clear that open internet is extremely important for innovation, economic growth, and social progress in Canada and in the world. And it is essential in a modern digital world and allows many activities in health, entertainment, and other areas. And it is important for a healthy democracy. This can only be possible when citizens can freely access information. The government supports open internet. You tabled Bill C-10, and at the beginning you mentioned that its objective was to regulate digital broadcasters and put them on a level playing field with conventional broadcasters. So Cineplus, Netflix, who are in competition with TVA, CBC, CTV, and all of the other digital platforms. And we could make the same comparison for radio. But somewhere along the line, you made the decision to withdraw Section 4.1. So my question is, why was 4.1 there in the first place?
Comme vous le savez,
as you know, the objective of Bill C-10 is to make it so that the ecosystem of laws and regulations around the broadcasting system, and it must be noted that the last time this bill was modernized was under a Conservative government that put in place the entire ecosystem that we have today around broadcasting for our conventional players. And with Bill C-10, the objective is to adapt that regulatory system to web giants who are taking more and more space in the ecosystem. You mentioned net neutrality. Mr. Minister, that was not my question. That was the first question. The second question is why 4.1 was there in the first place when you tabled the bill? That is a simple question to which I want the answer. But you did mention net neutrality. Yes, but you answered that first question earlier. My question now is, why would you have included 4.1 in the first place in Bill C-10? Mr. Chair, I certainly do want to answer that question, but in the MP's opening, he spoke about net neutrality. Mr. Chair, it is my right to ask questions and to receive answers. My question is simple. I would like the minister to explain why 4.1 was originally in the bill. It's the only question. It's simple. Forget my preamble about net neutrality. Why was 4.1 there in the first place? So the first version the committee received of Bill C-10 at that time represented our best interpretation of what this modernization of the Act should be. But as soon as the bill was tabled, I was the first one to say that that bill could be enhanced. After numerous interventions by all of the political parties that could participate in this committee, including the Conservative Party, and after hearing from many experts say that Bill C-10 would be too broad, and as Mr. Waugh said, an undertaking or the bill would not apply to an undertaking such as YouTube, which is the biggest music platform for Canadians, that this bill was too broad. And after hearing all of this, we decided to amend it. Thank you. By removing 4.1, you also removed protections for users who upload content on social media. Can you identify one other country in the whole world, a democratic country, that regulates user-generated content on social media with the Broadcasting Act? One country. I think that there is an error in the premise of your question because Bill C-10 does not have to do with content moderation. Bill C-10 deals with providing necessary tools so that web giants pay their fair share. Mr. Minister, I will stop you there. In 4.1, there were two sentences that, as written, dealt with user-generated content. You removed 4.1. The question was, can you name any other country in the world that regulates user-generated content online? Can you name any country in the world of all democratic countries? I must continue to give you the same answer, Mr. Reyes. The premise of your question deals with content moderation. Mr. Minister, I ask a question. Tell me one country.
Operator, 6 minutes are up.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Just as a quick reminder, everyone, I understand in the midst of in a feverish pitch that we we have our arguments. I understand in the back and forth we may talk over each other, and to a great degree that's inevitable. But the only thing I ask is please do not raise your voice when you do that, because we have interpreters whose ears are close to your microphones, and it's damage for them. And I appreciate you. Please keep that in mind. Okay, let's go to Mr. Housefather. 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the witnesses. I was very pleased that at the last meeting that I was able to bring forward this motion that was amended by Mr. Waugh, that was adopted by the committee to have an amended charter statement to address the concerns that people had about Section 2B of the charter and the removal of Section 4.1 from the bill. And I'm going to tailor my questions to that issue. I'm also pleased, by the way, that our government has brought in this question of charter statements so that legal information is provided to parliamentarians and the public as we analyze the bill on the potential impact on their rights. And I do want to say that that is from the Liberal government. So all my questions are going to be to Maître Drouin. And Maître Drouin, it's a great pleasure to see you here today. First, I'm going to have some short questions and then some longer ones. So on the short ones, if you could stay short. Maître Drouin, would it be true to say that charter statements are non-political documents drafted by career civil servants in the Department of Justice?
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the member. You are right.
Political statement. They identified provisions of a bill that may potentially affect charter rights. They are draft in plain languages, and they talk to you to perform your work, but also to support public debate on proposed bill. It is a minister's responsibility. I just want to say that minister, though, approved the charter statement.
Of course, but he doesn't draft it to begin with. So let me then come back to the question of the charter statement that you provided in the amended charter statement. The amended charter statement says that there are no additional concerns or considerations that have been raised with respect to Section 2B, freedom of expression of the charter, that have been brought about by changes or amendments to the bill. Is that correct?
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, yes, the answer to that question is it is fine. The additional explanatory document takes the same approach as the charter statement, and because Minister Guilbeault's objectives remain unchanged, the conclusion is that the guarantees of rights of freedoms under the charter are not affected.
Section 2.1 of the bill states that I, as a user of social media who posts and uploads on social media, and I'm unaffiliated with Facebook or YouTube or any of the platforms I may post on, am not subject to CRTC regulation myself, correct?
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair.
Correct questions and response, if I may say. Section 2 of the bill has not been affected. So users that are not affiliated to broadcaster and broadcasting service providers are not subject to the Broadcasting Act.
Perfect. So now I'm going to get to more detailed questions that I think would address concerns that a lot of attorneys may have in reading the charter statement. So we all understand that with Ms. DeBruzen's amendments, there would be very limited CRTC regulation permitted. There'd only be a couple of things that the CRTC could do to look at Canadian revenue, to address the question of making them pay for Canadian culture and contributing to Canadian funds and looking at discoverability. So one question I have is the charter statement doesn't specifically address whether section 2B of the charter is violated and whether we need to rely on section 1 to save, the Oakes test, reasonable limits, to save the bill. Could you advise me, does the way the charter statement is drafted mean that the department has determined that there's very little risk that section 2B itself is violated and we would not need to rely on section 1?
Thank you. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair.
So the new proposed amendment, as you adequately pointed, really limit the regulatory power that the CRTC may have to very small and for specific authorities. What is important to say is that when you look at those 4 head of authorities for the CRTC to adopt future regulation, they are not there for the CRTC to ask the user to change their content. So I think this is also a very important element. And as I said, the purposes of the bill, and mainly the fact that the bill is there to promote the culture in Canada and to make sure that our policy, when it respects to culture, whether it's in 2 languages or the Indigenous culture, so this objective remains. So this is why we can conclude that the guaranteed under the Charter respecting freedom of expression is not limited.
Thank you. And then my last question, Mr. Chair, because I think I probably don't have that much time. But so, Madame Drouin, Maître Drouin,
Ms. Drouin.
Again, then just answer the question, making clear you're not relying on Section 1 of the Charter to save anything because Section 2B in itself is not violated. I'd appreciate it. And then my other question relates to discoverability. So for discoverability, for social media companies to determine prioritization, there's arguments that may be made that you're now allowing private social media companies to determine the priority of Canadian content and they're not regulated by the Charter. Does that create any concern? So those are my 2 questions and you have the rest of my time to answer them.
Merci.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the member.
So maybe one thing when it comes to freedom of expression. So freedom of expression is a very large concept. So this is why when we talk about, the guaranteed under the Charter respecting the freedom of expression, we really have to look at the broader context. Otherwise, if you only look at, and it's not in Canada an absolute right when it comes to freedom of expression. So you need to look at the broader context. You need to look at the proportionality of the regulation that you are putting in place to regulate an industry. So this is exactly the analysis we have made here to conclude that the guaranteed under the Act, under the Charter of Right, is not affected.
Thank you.
So that's an important thing. Regarding your question,
sorry, Madame Drouin, I'm really running short on time. We were well over when the question was asked. So at some point, you may want to work that answer in later on in your deliberations. But in the meantime, I really have to go to Monsieur Champoux. Monsieur Champoux, pour 6 minutes.
For 6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to all of the witnesses with us today. If I may, I would like to begin with you, Mr. Minister. I would like to give a recap. For some time now, your narrative has been that the NDP and the Bloc agreed to remove 4.1, but I would like to put that in context. I would like to explain the process and how discussions between parties work. Of course, we try to make our committee work as efficient as possible and save time. So the Bloc had a proposal around 4.1. First, we suggested to amend 4.1 to keep it but to remove the exclusion for social media while preserving the exclusion for users of social media. But in our discussions, people from your party, Mr. Minister, proposed to remove 4.1 and then to add amendments. And I admit that we did agree with that, but it was not our initial proposal. We would have preferred to amend it. So that is an important nuance. That is what I wanted to specify. With that said, lately we have often heard that all opposition parties have been blocking the clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-10. And I would like to ask you a question, Minister. Very frankly, we are at an impasse now, but at the beginning of the very first meeting we had, when this problem around removing 4.1 was brought up by the Conservatives, we spoke. And I said to you, a solution that would suit everyone would be to go back to Clause 3 and Section 4.1, amend it, and continue work. I proposed that to you. Do you think that that would have been a good idea?
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. You probably have seen that I've done a number of interviews on C-10 over the past weeks. I never spoke about filibustering by your party. You answered a question I asked you in the House, Minister. But as you know, the Minister of Heritage does not sit on the committee. The committee has sovereignty and is free to make amendments and propose changes to the bill. I have commended this. I have invited the committee to do so repeatedly. I met with you. I met with other members of the committee as well. You asked me if we could go back, and you made your proposal. But first, regarding what you proposed at the time, if I understand right, it would have been necessary for unanimous consent by the committee to be allowed to go back. Okay, I'm going to shorten this, Mr. Minister, because we have very little time to receive the answers, and we want the answers to be more specific than that. What I said was that I was convinced that all parties would give unanimous consent to go back to 4.1, amend it, and then continue work. Everyone would have been satisfied. You know, sometimes we have these discussions in the corridors, and then we come back to the committee. But that solution was not even considered. We missed 4 meetings. And the committee also wanted to invite the Minister of Justice, and that invitation was not accepted. Do you think if you had accepted my proposal, we might be studying the bill still today and we might have had a chance to get it through the House? In hindsight, do you think it would have been a good solution? Look, that's a question that is based on a whole series of hypotheses. So any answer I could give you would be highly hypothetical. What I can say is there clearly are people in Canada who believe that there should be no form of regulation whatsoever online, whether it be on hate speech or culture or news media. Some of those critics started reacting very early. You probably remember that the leader of the official opposition would throw the Yale report in the bin. Honestly, all discussions we might have on 4.1 aside, I think that there was one political party that decided to take a hold of this issue. Yes, but Minister, I must interrupt you because I only have 40 seconds left to ask you a question. I know what answer you're going to give in any case. I'll ask you an easy question. Do you think it would be a good idea to include in Canadian broadcasting policy a provision so that there should be a contribution to freedom of expression. Do you think that that should also be included? Do you think it would be a good idea? I think it is already in the bill in a section that has already been adopted by the committee, which is no longer being discussed by this committee.
Ms. McPherson, for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to thank all our witnesses for being with us today. Thank you, Minister, for coming to answer our questions. Minister, you started your intervention today by stating that the cultural sector is counting on us, and I thank you for acknowledging that. Though I have to express my disappointment in the way that you've managed the creation and the communications around this legislation. I, for one, am looking forward to continuing to work as hard as we can to get this legislation fixed, to get this legislation through this committee. I know that is not the case with all our committee members. I know we have seen filibustering, we have seen, all kinds of things being done to delay and impede this committee's work, but I think a lot of it, unfortunately, does have to fall with you, Minister. With all due respect, your mishandling of the bill has put all of us in this committee in a very difficult position. Many Canadians are concerned about the government wanting to regulate the content that they upload on social media. Now, I think that we're all clear that the bill would not give the power to the CRTC to regulate users on social media, but experts are saying that the content they upload could be. Even you have said so during some of your interventions with media. The updated charter review received by the Department of Justice seems to say that the respect of the charter in the hands of the CRTC, instead of making it clear in the legislation. Now, if we don't get this right, the legislation will be challenged in court and it will not be applied for years, which will put all of our cultural sector at a real disadvantage. Do you have a plan to address the concern of Canadians that their content will be subject to CRTC regulations?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. I won't go through it, but you've probably seen it or heard it. But there's a long list of organizations in Quebec, in English Canada, that's many pages long, that have all come out in support in the last few weeks for Bill C-10, from musicians to independent producers to writers and so on and so forth. So I have spoken over the course of the last year to thousands of people in the culture sector, and they agree with what we're trying to do with Bill C-10. And again, earlier in my speech, I quoted polling results that were released recently that show that 78% of Canadians.
So your plan is just to tell us that lots of people support it, and that's your plan to reassure Canadians is, don't worry, I have a list of organizations that support it. That's your plan?
No, that's not my plan, but there were many elements in your question. I'm trying to adequately answer all of them. So one element was you spoke about in your question about the cultural sector. So I answered that. I think that the second part of your question, there's no situation where a user has to respect any type of CRTC regulation. There's no situation where a user, even with millions in revenues and views, has to deal in any shape or form with the CRTC. Let me remind that the sole regulation that the CRTC can impose on social media platform is the discoverability of Canadian creators. The internet is infinite.
But it's the content piece that we're looking at, not the user, the content piece.
The CRT, this Bill C-10 is not about content moderation. The CRTC in its last 50 years of existence has never done content moderation, and Bill C-10 doesn't give the ability for the CRTC to do content moderation.
Minister,
and I think we have a charter statement that is pretty clear about Bill C-10 respecting Article 2 of the charter. I think that the statement, and we've heard from Deputy Minister Drouin, who's been very clear on that as well.
So we've just heard you show us your list of organizations that support C10. You know, obviously everyone on this committee has met with organizations that have expressed their concern about this legislation and their support for having good legislation. We all understand that this legislation is not as strong as it needs to be. This is why there are 120 amendments to this legislation that the committee is trying to get through. But in your recent interviews on C10, Minister, you seem to want to go after experts that want to protect, you know, one of the most important rights in our democracy, and that is the freedom of expression. So the experts that are working on this issue and that have been working on this issue for a very long time have expressed concerns. They've expressed that there is problems within the legislation. So what is the goal of attacking them when we should be working with them to find a solution? Like, it does feel to me very much like we have you saying, don't worry, it's not a problem. We have the conservatives saying, let's not do anything at all. Let's not provide legislation for our broadcasters. Even the cultural sector, you know, doesn't obviously want to regulate user-generated content. So it feels very much like you're trying to divide Canadians on this issue and not work collectively to find a solution. I'm wondering why that is.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker. I think I would beg to differ with the premise of your question. Many experts have come out in Quebec, in English Canada, saying that Bill C-10 was not an infringement on freedom of speech or an attack on the Charter. And in fact, we now have a statement by the independent civil servant of the Ministry of Justice that says exactly that.
But by not acknowledging those experts that have worked in this field, there is no way forward. What you're doing is you're pitting one side against the other instead of finding a collective solution that will work for everyone.
I think we have to recognize that there are people who, and I recognize that there are people who believe there should be no regulation whatsoever when it comes to the internet. There should be no regulation on cultural issues, on issues like hate speech, or on fair remuneration of media. And part of the Canadian population agrees with that as well. I recognize that. My government and myself disagree with that point of view. We believe that there should be regulation on all of these elements, and so do many other countries. I've had conversations with counterparts in Germany, in France, in the UK, in Finland, in Ukraine. Okay. I'm sorry, Mr.
Guilbeault, I'm sorry, I have to leave it at that. I'm sure there are other countries you wish to speak of, but right now I don't have that time to put into it. Now, folks, we are into the second round. Just as you know from experience, I like to be more strict on the second round because we run out of time. However, the minister has given us 1 hour. I want to get every party in here. I want to get all four caucuses in on this conversation. So in order to do that, Mr. Minister, I may exceed the time by about 2 or 3, perhaps 4 minutes. I hope you're okay with that. Thank you very much for that, for the thumbs up. Ms. Harder, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please. Ms. Harder, sorry.
Thank you. Minister, let's just have a little bit of fun. I know you're on the hot seat, so we'll just take it easy here for a moment. There are 3 movies that were graded by the Canadian Audiovisual Certification Office, CAVCO, which of course rates the Canadianness of videos. One of the videos was called Ultimate Gretzky. It's a film that showcases Canada's very own Wayne Gretzky, of course, and his career in the NHL. Is this a Canadian film?
As you rightly pointed out, there is an organization whose mandate it is to do this.
It's just a simple yes or no. Is it a Canadian film?
It's not up to the Minister of Canadian Heritage or any other politician to make that determination.
Okay. I was just curious if you knew. Canadian Bacon has also been given a rating. It stars Canadian actor John Candy. It was filmed in Canada, and it's about Canada. Is that a Canadian film?
Love that film. But again, it's not up to the Canadian Minister of Heritage or any other politicians
I just thought because it falls under your department, maybe you would know. Okay, the third film, it's called Who Killed Gandhi? It's an investigative documentary of the death of Gandhi. Canadian film?
You keep asking the same questions. Unfortunately, the answer will be the same.
So Ultimate Gretzky, interestingly enough, isn't. Canadian Bacon isn't, but who killed Gandhi? It is. Minister, you keep talking about wanting to protect Canadian content and further Canadian culture, but yet I just listed 2 films, Ultimate Gretzky and Canadian Bacon, which should be classified as Canadian content. They're not. And Minister, you're not even able to identify that. So what confidence should Canadians have in your ability to legislate this?
I think it's important to remember that the committee is sovereign, and if the committee identifies a potential problem, and we're a minority government, the committee.
Minister, it's okay. Thank you. Thank you. Section 4.1 in the bill
to correct the bill.
It's okay. It's okay. Thank you. There are 2 sections in this bill that were of significance. Section 2.1, which protects individuals, and Section 4.1, which protects their content. Section 2.1, individuals, that was kept in, but the section that protects their content, what they post online, that section, that was taken out. So they no longer have that protection. Why?
You might have heard, like I have a few minutes ago, Justice Deputy Minister Drouin answer that question very, very clearly, and specifying that the powers given to the CRTC are very narrow and targeted, and don't have to do with content moderation.
Okay, so will the CRTC then, will they be given the responsibility under C10, the power to regulate the algorithms used by social media platforms to decide what type of content that people can and cannot see on their Facebook feeds, or the information that appears on Google or YouTube?
The concept of discoverability is about...
I'm just curious, will the CRTC be given that power?
Mr. Chair, may I be allowed to answer the question?
Please answer the question.
Okay, folks, so let me just pause for just one moment. Yes, you can. I'm loath to get in between 2 people who have a spirited discussion. However, can I just remind the committee of one thing? You can do a monologue or you can ask questions. Both are acceptable and both flow rather well. But when you try to do both, it becomes very problematic. I'm not accusing you, Ms. Harder, of doing that. I'm just saying that sometimes in the spirit of questions back and forth, we tend to talk over each other. I'm only asked that you police yourselves to a point where we get questions, answers, comments, because we are televised and a lot of people are watching. So, Ms. Harder, once again, you have the floor.
I just was wondering if the CRTC will have the power to regulate algorithms.
Again, the concept of discoverability is ensuring that as part of these platforms, Canadian content becomes more visible towards for Canadians, or actually any audience to watch or see. There won't be any requirement, obviously, for users, just like it's the case right now with YouTube.
Yes, then they will have the ability to regulate those algorithms. I'm just not sure why I'm not able to get a yes or a no answer.
That is not a yes. When you go on YouTube, 3/4 of what is viewed on.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
One moment. Ms. Ian, point of order.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'm just really thinking we should have some decorum here. The minister is trying to speak and should be allowed to do so.
I appreciate the comment. It's not officially a point of order, Ms. Ian, but I thank you otherwise. I do thank you for your intervention. Okay, folks, back to regularly scheduled programming. And let's see how this unfolds so that we can provide the right information. Thank you all. And Ms. Harder, you have the floor. And I think you have about 1:30 left.
Thank you. Mr. Philip Palmer and Mr. Len Saint-Aubin, they were both at the table when the Broadcasting Act was originally put together. They're now available and able to offer their expertise on the subject matter. Did you consult them when creating Bill C-10?
I would be happy to provide the committee with the list of all Canadian experts, organizations that have been consulted as per the preparation of Bill C-10. And I will also remind the members and the committee that prior to Bill C-10 being tabled, there was almost a 2-year consultation, the leading up to the Yale report that was done, where close to 2,000 papers were presented.
Thank you. It's interesting because I actually had the opportunity to meet with them, and I'm a backbencher, and they made time for me. And so I found that interesting that you didn't actually take the time to reach out to them, because I think they would have been more than happy to give you some time. But what they have to say about the bill is this: the arrogance of taking this huge vehicle of expression, commerce, and learning, in other words, the internet, and stuffing it into an act that was designed to regulate a technology that is now more than a century old is an offense to reason. Minister, they have huge issues with Bill C-10, and they've asked you to scrap it. I would request the same.
I don't think there was a question in that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and we've run out of time. Thank you, folks, for a spirited discussion. We now go on to Ms. Ian for 5 minutes, please.
Mr. Chair, thank you so very much. And thank you to the Minister and Deputy Minister for joining us here today. Deputy Minister Drouin, when we last heard from you, my colleague, Mr. Housefather, was asking you a question. I just wanted to give you the time to finish it. So please go ahead.
Thank you. As I said a little bit, and I guess the question you're alluding to is the discoverability question. As I said, because the purpose of the bill hasn't changed, because the four authorities, and this one in particular, is not a regulatory power that the CRTC can ask indirectly through broadcasting service provider to change the content of an individual or of a user, a non-affiliated user. This is why we conclude that this power in particular does not affect the guarantee of the freedom of expression.
Deputy Minister Drouin, thank you so much for that. And Minister Guilbeault, if I might move on to you right now. At committee, we heard, Minister, from several witnesses from the BIPOC community, being Black, Indigenous, people of color, who expressed deep concerns about their voices being considered in this bill. So how will reforms lead to increasing those voices, making sure that there is more diversity in this sector? Can you paint a picture for us, please?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think achieving this goal is about three things. And not necessarily in order, but certainly who do we nominate to take part in many of our institutions? The Canada Council for the Arts, our national museums, and various other organizations. As minister, I've had the pleasure and privilege of nominating Jessie Wente, an Indigenous person, an accomplished artist and producer, as chair of the Canada Council for the Arts. It was the first time ever. It's the first time ever in the history of Canada that we have an Indigenous person at the head of the Canada Council. Gaétan Vernat, who's now also on, who's originally from Haiti, who also now is on the board of the Canada Council. Aisha Khan, the first Muslim woman to head a national Canadian museum. So we have we have to ensure that those organizations are a good reflection of what Canada is in its diversity. I think it's about ensuring that our programs are adapted to the needs of those communities. So again, in the audiovisual sector, we now have a fully funded Indigenous Screen Office as per budget 21. We are working on a Black Screen Office as well. I have been meeting with many of those people, those witnesses that appear in front of the committee to work with them to see how we can do this. And thirdly, it's about putting our money where our mouth is. So ensuring that groups, racialized Canadians, Indigenous Canadians have access to the resources that they need to express to tell their stories, to express their arts, and to be visible here and abroad.
And is it your opinion, Minister, that these reforms will help to amplify those voices even more?
yes, I think we still have a long way to go. There's still a lot of work to do, but Bill C-10 will enable us, as I said in my remarks initially, will mean that around $830 million in additional money would be added for the cultural sector, and certainly for BIPOC communities, for underrepresented group in our arts and culture sector.
Minister Guilbeault, thank you. If I might go back to the Deputy Minister of Justice now, Madame Drouin. The Minister of Justice has provided this committee with an amendment update, and it outlines quite clearly that there are safeguards to protect social media users. So just want to ask you to explain how that happened despite the removal of Section 4.1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. So first of all, I think Minister Guilbeault said it very clearly that when this committee decided to struck back one of the section of the bill, it was not made in a vacuum, and the intent was to retable amendments. And this amendment is quite clear, and it restricts the CRTC power on broadcasting service providers on the type of regulation they can adopt to as I said, very limited for head of authority powers. So I think it's important not to read the bill just as the first amendment that this committee adopted, but in light of the other amendments that Minister Guilbeault wanted to bring.
Merci. Just very quickly, Ms. Drouin.
Maybe just to add one thing in terms of new content about what I've said before, it's also important to say that the CRTC is also bound by the Charter and has to respect the Charter. So the CRTC has a discretionary power and will have to exercise their authorities respecting the Charter. And there are also some mechanisms to make sure that the CRTC will respect the Charter.
Thank you, Ms. Drouin, and I have to respect the clock. Very quickly, Ms. Ian, I owe you an apology. Yes, decorum is a point of order. I misspoke only to say what I should have said was the remedy I have to offer you is to ask everyone to be nice with each other, unfortunately. So let's all look at that as a lesson. Thank you very much. Let's move on now. Mr. Champoux, for 2 minutes, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, at the very end of my first question period, I talked to you about the possibility of including in the Broadcasting Act a mention that would specify that the freedom of expression must be encouraged, protected, and guaranteed by the regulator's decisions. There is something that deals with broadcasting undertakings, so I have a question for you, because now we're talking about users. You're a regular Canadian. Do you think that it would be reassuring for those who are worried through a new amendment to add that mention, which would specify that the Broadcasting Act and the Canadian Broadcasting System must encourage and protect for freedom of expression for citizens that use the internet and social media? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I think there are numerous elements to answering your question. First, as has been specified, Bill C-10 will not apply to individuals. That's on the one hand. So you are correct in saying that in Section 2.3, there is a reference to undertakings and not individuals, because the law will have power over businesses and undertakings, not individuals. I think you heard Ms. Drouin very clearly speak about the Minister of Justice's updated statement, which explains that Bill C-10, as amended, respects the Charter. on the one hand. And on the other hand, as she just explained, the CRTC also and anyway has the obligation to respect the Charter, and there are mechanisms in place to ensure that. So you said the same answer again. You said that what's already in place is sufficient. Well, perhaps the last element that I could give you in my answer is that the Minister of Heritage is not a member of the committee. The committee, you can make decisions, and we are a minority government. You can work together with other committee members to propose amendments to this bill. It's true that there have been 100 amendments, which is not, I should like to point out, is nothing special when amending bills. I think that as a legislator, we can always do better, and a bill can always be improved. Thank you. I think that is all the time I had left.
Thank you very much. Ms. McPherson, 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I would like to thank the Minister for being here with us today. Minister, as you know, I'm the Member of Parliament for Edmonton Strathcona, and as you probably know, Edmonton Strathcona is the heart of the creative sector in Alberta. This legislation is vitally important to so many members of my constituency, but so many members across Canada. And we know that if a solution is not found to protect freedom of expression, this law will not go forward. It will go to court, it will not be enforced for years, and this will have a huge impact on the cultural sector in Canada. You know, the members of this committee have been pushed hard to work quickly on this bill because because it needs to get done. I, for one, supported the Liberals' motion to have extended sitting hours, to have additional meetings added on. But the only reason that we really feel this time crunch is because your government has not it's not ruled out calling an election in the middle of this pandemic. Otherwise, we would still have months ahead of us to ensure that we get this right, that we do our job properly. Can you assure the committee and the stakeholders that are so desperate for good legislation that we can take the time to do this job right and that your government will not call an election?
Thank you for the question. And I would like to address the first element of the question, which is about freedom of speech. As you've seen and as you've heard today, we have a charter statement that was written by the independent civil service.
I'm sorry, Mr. Minister, I know that you're trying to address all that I've brought up. We're going to run out of time because I only have 2.5 minutes. Will you commit to not calling an election before we can get this legislation done?
If I could be allowed just to finish my answer on the charter statement, you have the charter statement in front of you. You've heard Deputy Minister Drouin explain very clearly that Bill C-10 respects the Charter of Rights and Freedom, and not only that, but there are mechanisms in place for the CRTC to ensure that they do that. They have discretionary powers, but these powers are not absolute, and that they have to be exercised in light of the Charter of Rights and Freedom.
I certainly don't mean to be rude, but I think that you're not going to answer the question about whether or not you would stop plunging us into an election during a pandemic.
My government is not interested in having an election. I think we've seen that some parties have been fundraising around the controversy they created around C-10. We haven't been doing that. We've been hard at work trying to do everything we can to help the arts and culture sector. I would remind you that the budget that was just presented by Deputy Minister Freeland is an historic budget when it comes to the arts and culture sector in this country. We have never seen such an important budget to help our artists, our musicians, our creators. It is an historical budget. So I think we've seen that we're there for our artists, and Bill C-10 is another clear example of that.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson, and thank you, Minister, as well. Well, folks, that brings us to our first hour, the end of our first hour. Minister, we know you have to go. You're more than welcome to stay, but we also have our officials online. I assume this is the part where we take a break up to 5 minutes, or would you rather keep going? I think we'd rather have a break for 5 minutes. Did I see a thumbs up on that? Okay, great. So now, of course, we're not having anybody new on this, so therefore I'm going to be strict with the 5 minutes. Once you're ready to come back online, please turn on your video so that I get a good gauge of who's back on, okay? So up to about 5 minutes. We'll see you then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the committee.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. After a brief pause, we get back to the business at hand. Joining us, we have the department officials from two departments. We have from the Canadian Heritage as well as the Department of Justice. Okay, now we're going to start this session with an opening for up to 10 minutes, once again, like we did in the last round. And I believe, Ms. Drouin, that would be you.
Oh, thank you. I haven't planned to do an opening statement as you know it was supposed to be, but I have something ready if a member would like, so I can certainly do that.
Okay, so let's. Normally, I give you the floor. What I'll do is, since we didn't get anything from the Department of Justice in the first round, we got a statement from the minister. How about I give you 5 minutes? I see you, Mr. Reyes.
Perfect.
I'll be there in just a moment. So I will give you up to 5 minutes to do an opening. But before I do that, I see Mr. Reyes has his hand up. Mr. Reyes.
Oui, merci, monsieur.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. At the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Waugh, in order to not take away any time from the minister who did agree to be with us, Mr. Waugh asked during the second hour to be able to come back to a question that he raised. I'm not sure if it would be appropriate to give the floor to him. I don't want to overstep into your authority, Mr. Chair, but I think he didn't want to take away from the minister's time, so he wanted to wait till the second hour to talk about it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I hope Mr. Waugh doesn't mind, but I was just waiting for his hand to go up. As I mentioned, I'd like to proceed with what is on the schedule, obviously, but Mr. Waugh, you would like the floor. You go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Mr. Reyes. I was going to listen to what the Justice Department had to say, but I think it's important to go back to Monday, May 10th, when Mr. Housefather brought the motion out, and I made sub-amendments to that. And if possible, Mr. Chair, could we have the clerk read the three sections of our motion, just to kind of get an area of who we invited. And, we did invite, I believe, the Justice Minister and the department officials, and we do not have the Justice Minister here. And part of my concern, Mr. Chair, is when I went on the web page of the Justice the Broadcasting Act to make consequential amendments to other acts. And this is the old one. They're still citing Clause 3. So this is why we needed to get the minister here today. We need a point of clarification. When I see the charter statement on the webpage of the Justice Department, and it's an old one, so which is it? Are we using the old one, or, well, you sent an email out and this is what we had. So I do believe we need to hear from the Minister of Justice. We need a clarification on this, because it's my recollection on the Monday that we asked both ministers to come, and we want to thank Minister Guilbeault on behalf of the committee for fulfilling his obligation for 1 hour. But we also asked for the Minister of Justice to come. So when I looked at the Justice website now, I am totally confused where we're going on this. They haven't updated it, or if they have, let us know. But it's the minister that is responsible for the charter. And I appreciate the department officials in the first round of questioning, and we're going to question them in a minute. But as a committee, all 11 of us agreed, including the Liberals, the Bloc, and the NDP, to have both ministers appear before the Heritage Committee, before we move even on to our panel. And, the clerk has done yeoman service trying to get the panel ready for Monday. But now I would say we need to hear from the Minister of Justice himself before we move on Monday. So I would like a clarification on our amendment, that the motion by Mr. Housefather, and we all agreed to the sub-amendment on Monday. So what happened to the Justice Minister today?
Just a couple things. Let me start with the second point first, and that was the statement that is currently posted. Now, due to a motion that was passed on March 8th, and I'll just read it for you, that the committee pursuant to the motion adopted March 8th, committee published on the committee's website written responses to questions provided by the Department of Canadian Heritage. So what's put on our website is exclusive to that. Now, that being said, I am a servant of the committee itself, humbly so. And that being said, if you wish to have what was released recently by the Department of Justice regarding Bill C-10, the revised, we can have that published, but I pretty much need permission from all to do that. So do I have permission to post that on the Heritage, our committee website regarding the recent opinion by the Department of Justice as we just discussed? Seeing no resistance and a plethora of thumbs, I'm going to say yes, we will publish it. So I'll ask the clerk to publish it following this meeting. Mr. Reyes. Sorry. Yes, no, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Reyes. You're on mute, sir.
Merci,
Yes,
Monsieur.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But before I take the floor, I think Mr. Waugh asked a question to the clerk about the motion, whether she could read it again to confirm that we all unanimously agreed for both ministers to come meet with us. And after, I would like to make my comment.
Yes, Mr. Reyes. I was just getting to that because I was doing the second part first. Now let me deal with the first part. If you wish, I'm going to ask the clerk to read the motion as was put forward and the intent of it. So, Madam Clerk, as requested, can you please read that?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Can I just confirm, Mr. Waugh, did you want me to read the motion as it was adopted?
Mr. Waugh?
Please.
Thank you, sir. Okay. So as adopted Monday, May 10th, 2021, that the committee asked the Minister of Justice to provide a revised charter statement on Bill C-10 as soon as possible, focusing on whether the committee's changes to the bill related to content uploaded by users of social media services have impacted the initial charter statement provided, in particular as relates to Section 2B of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Invite the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Canadian Heritage, accompanied by relevant departmental officials, and an expert panel consisting of one witness from each recognized party to appear before the committee as soon as possible to discuss the revised charter statement and any implications of amendments made by the committee to the bill. 3, suspend clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-10 until the completion of both points 1 and 2.
Folks, thank you, Clerk. I've appreciated what we're talking about here, but let's keep in mind that the further we go and when we get to the hearings, we're losing a big part of the second round. Nevertheless, Mr. Reyes.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to add one last comment. After that, I was wondering if we could extend the meeting. We have witnesses, and I'm sure my fellow committee members have questions to ask them. But I would like you to clarify something for me, or perhaps the clerk could clarify it. I asked a question right before vote last Monday, or this Monday past, rather. I got out the blues just to check that my memory wasn't misleading me. But in the blues, I asked for the vote to make sure that everyone was in agreement, that we would hear from the witness panel after hearing from both ministers. And for me, that's important because the experts will react. I see people nodding or shaking their head. I just want to know, are the Liberals unable to convince ministers to be present? Could we push back the expert panel? Yes, thank you. Okay, I can see your gestures. And Mr. Chair, you said I don't need to repeat that. It's correct.
Around the room, a critical mass of nods, if I could use the term to proceed in the way. Donc, je voudrais...
So I just want to make sure that I understood what had been agreed on by all committee members. And after that, Mr. Chair, or if other people would like to comment, then we could hear from witnesses.
Okay. I'll provide here's what I have. I have direction from the committee and what we have done in the past. If you recall the last witness meeting that we had, instead of doing the 2 separate hours, we did 1 2-hour block with the ministers, or if they were there, minister, and the accompanying officials. So I'm following what you're saying, but I'm also following what we've done in the past regarding C10 witness. However, I'm open to suggestion as to if you'd like to change that or not. So if I misinterpreted, Mr. Reyes, what you said at the end, I sincerely apologize, but I thought from the direction of the committee was we'd have 2 ministers accompanied by officials to appear before the committee, 4 experts, and the charter statement, the revised charter statement that was asked for. That's from the the amended motion. Let me now go to Mr. Wong.
Well, thank you, Mr.
Tout
Chair.
à fait, Monsieur le Président.
Sorry, Mr. Reyes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. I'd rather get to someone, but if you have a quick point to what I just said, please do. What?
Yes. Yes, I fully agree with everything you said, Mr. Chair. I would just like to mention that I took the trouble before the vote to make sure that all committee members agreed, that we were all in agreement to invite both ministers before the witness panels. And I'm just asking for clarification on this. I'm not necessarily asking for us to follow through to the letter on what we said, but today, why did we not receive one minister? Why did we not receive both? And so I took the trouble to ask for clarification before we voted to check that we had all agreed to hear from both ministers before the experts. But that will not be the case, as I see. Could you please explain?
Okay. The only explanation, sir, I can give you at this point, before I go to Mr. Wall, because I'd rather hear from the others and come back to it, is that we were advised to the committee that Minister Lametti respectfully declines the invitation. That's what I have to go on right now. Mr. Wall, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it was agreed to unanimously by this committee to get both ministers here. And I think the Minister of Justice is showing a lack of consideration for the charter, to be honest with you. Issuing a charter statement may be fine, but come and explain himself to the Committee of Heritage as we study Bill C-10, the Broadcasting Act. I've just talked about this. Where all 11 committee members unanimously last Monday agreed to bring both ministers to committee. There is a lack of consideration by the Minister of Justice. Mr. Chair, I'll bring another issue. When Mark Zuckerberg decided not to show to committee, the biggest uproar in committee was by the Liberal MPs sitting around the table. So I think for consideration, we need to hear from the Minister of Justice on this. Doing a press release and sending out an update charter is fine, but come. We've asked them to come, and it was agreed to last Monday, and that's the least the minister can do. And, you know, Ms. Drouin, thank you for filling in, but we want to see the minister. And we got that with the Minister of Heritage, but we did not get that from the Minister of Justice. And, you know, out of consideration, out of this important bill that has been discussed for months, I think he owes it to the committee to come, as we have asked him to come. And we have open next week before we can get to the panel. We need to hear from the Justice Minister first and then go to the panel. And as you said, we have 3 meetings scheduled next week. We can delay until the minister decides if he wants to come Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, and then we can move ahead with the panel. Thank you.
Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have to agree. I mean, I'm deeply disappointed that the minister isn't here to join us. And the reason for that is that him not being here does not comply with the motion. This motion was brought forward at the beginning of this week. It was important for us to stop the filibustering and the logjam that had happened within this committee. It was a way that we had all worked together to try to move forward on this legislation. Without the minister coming, the potential for us to fall back into that logjam, to fall back into a position where none of the work that needs to happen gets done in this committee is is enormous. So the minister, I think it's vitally important that he comes. I strongly support making sure that the minister comes and shares his perspective with us and lets us ask him questions, so that as parliamentarians, we can do the work that our constituents and Canadians have tasked us with.
Mr. Brusen.
Thank you. I would just like to point out for everyone that we actually do have the justice officials here, and that Madame Drouin is available. We have another half an hour to this meeting. And my question would be to the other members, what are the questions that you want to ask, and why not ask some of the officials who are here? And it's also my understanding that, and I would like to clarify that I understand from the review of the Blues that there was not unanimous consent of the parties, that we must hear from the ministers first before the panel. So I don't really see there being a reason to delay the panel being heard on Monday. But again, as I pointed out, we have people here who are ready, willing, and able to answer those questions. Why don't we put those questions to them?
Mr. Champoux.
Mr. Chair, frankly, I don't know what is going on. Someone, I don't know who, but someone somewhere seems to really not wish for this bill to continue. It's clear in the motion. I've been reading over it, and I can see it in the motion that we voted on the 10th, to invite the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Canadian Heritage, accompanied by the related officials. It could not be any clearer, Mr. Chair. We have been at a stalemate for weeks. We have lost precious time. No one doubts the goodwill of Liberal members around the table. I know that it is important to all of you to move this bill forward. I wouldn't doubt it for a second. But there's someone who doesn't understand the urgency. We're asking why the Minister of Justice is not here. It's been weeks that we've been talking about this. He should have been prepared, and he could have anticipated that he would at one point or another be invited to testify. So I don't know where the blockage is, but I think the situation is ridiculous. The minister should be here today. And with all due respect for Ms. Drouin and her colleagues, and I have no doubt in their expertise, but I must say it was the minister that we invited to get through the impasse where we found ourselves. So I don't know at what stage that there's the block, but thank you.
Mr. Huss, no. Mr. Aitchison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate to Mr. Brusen's point. She's absolutely correct that we have department officials here, and I have no doubt that Ms. Drouin is a very capable lawyer and very learned. But we did ask for the minister. The minister himself, he's an impressive individual. He's a very impressive lawyer. He's a legal scholar. He taught law at McGill. He's, written many articles on, property law and intellectual property. I think he in many ways could really be seen as an expert in this field. We actually asked for him specifically. I think everyone agrees that he was supposed to be here. He's made some, really, I think, interesting points in the House of Commons over the years about things as the importance of net neutrality. I think he's quite knowledgeable. He would be a really, it's one of the reasons why we wanted him here. And I'm, if the committee has a role in this parliament, and we get to ask ministers to come to us, that's great. But the Minister of Heritage has fumbled an awful lot of the answers to these things and created more confusion, as Ms. McPherson quite justifiably pointed out. I think Mr. Lametti would be able to help clear an awful lot of this stuff up. And the fact that we have the Liberal, Mr. Brusen suggesting that we should just move on and talk to the officials makes me wonder if maybe Mr. Lametti can't defend what's going on and he just chooses not to be here. So, why, if we've asked for the Minister of Justice to be here, he should be here. I think it shows contempt for this committee.
Before I go to Mr. Waugh, I just want everyone to be cognizant of the time. We have approximately 27 minutes left under Mr. Waugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think as a committee, we should revisit the Minister of Justice. We should suspend this committee until the Minister of Justice appears, whenever that may be. I think you've heard from all parties here. The motion on May 10th was both ministers and their officials. Well, thanks to the Heritage Minister and their officials, they did show up today. Thank you, officials from Justice, although the minister himself did not show up. And I believe we should suspend until the minister comes to committee, whenever that may be. We do no other business until the Minister of Justice comes to address the charter. We asked for it last Monday, and that's not too much to ask as a committee. And I think we should suspend until the Minister of Justice attends for 1 full hour next week, if he can, soon as possible, to come to committee for we can do our due diligence on this bill.
Mr. Champoux.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, when Mr. Zuckerberg refused, we sent a summons for him to come and testify. I'm wondering if it might be necessary to do the same with our own Minister of Justice. I'm not officially proposing it, but I am raising the question. If we want for this to be done quickly, we don't want to waste any more time with the little time we have left, maybe we could do that.
Before I go to Ms. Harder, I'm loath to do this, but I just want to weigh in just on a couple notes. On Monday, we do have scheduled witnesses that were asked for by the motion. These are the 4 expert panel members that you asked. Those are in line with the motion, and those I'm assuming will go ahead. At least as committee chair, I've scheduled that. We've scheduled that already. Just a final note on page 982 of the standing orders. It says, "The standing committee cannot order a member of the House of Commons or a Senate to appear." I'm only asking you to bear that in mind as we try to come to a conclusion and an agreement on this, but I'm still your servant in this matter. Ms. Harder.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's interesting that you read that, because that means that this committee's work could effectively be stalled out indefinitely. Because according to the motion that was passed by this committee as amended, the Justice Minister does need to come and appear before this committee before we can proceed to clause by clause. And I believe clause by clause is necessary in order for Bill C-10 to make it into law. I would just put forward the same request that my other colleagues and the members from the NDP and the Bloc have put forward, and that is that the Justice Minister, according to the motion that was passed at this committee, does need to come. He does need to appear. And I recognize that there are expressions made in using verbal communication, and then there are expressions made in other ways. In committee, it's common that we often pass things or agree upon things based on a head nod or a hand put up, especially in our virtual world. And it was agreed upon at this committee that the Minister of Justice would come before we heard from the other expert witnesses. And so again, I would plead with you, Mr. Chair, that that should take place first.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. Just for point of clarification, I was only pointing at the difference between Mr. Zuckerberg and Minister Lametti as why one can and one cannot. Mr. Housefather.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. First of all, I'm also disappointed the Justice Minister is not here. Second of all, the motion is not quite as people are saying it is, because the motion was to invite them. It was not to not proceed if they didn't attend. Inviting is not the same as forcing someone to attend, right? That's compelling people to attend, which can't be done in the case of a minister. So in this case, we do have a very competent deputy minister who is here, who can answer the questions. I have heard Madame Drouin on many occasions. I used to be the chair of the Justice Committee, answer questions very effectively. And if we do have questions on this issue, I think the first step is to ask them to Madame Drouin, which I did on my questions related to the charter statement. In terms of, we have a panel coming up on Monday. I think those people have already been invited. The panel has been set up. I think we should proceed with that panel. If the committee wishes to re-invite the minister and to reiterate its invitation to the minister, I think that's totally reasonable to come on to asking him to come on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. But for the most part, my argument is inviting, what the motion said was we were to get a charter statement, we got it. We were to invite the Minister of Justice and Minister of Heritage and their officials. We invited them. Minister of Heritage and his officials came. The Minister of Justice's officials came. And now we're at a point where we have people here that could answer questions, and we're not asking them the questions. So I think we should answer the questions. We should proceed with the panel on Monday. And again, if the committee wishes to reiterate an invitation to the Minister of Justice, I will support it as I did on Monday of this week. Thank you.
Mr. Aitchison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if I could ask, the panel you said is scheduled for Monday. That means we do in fact have 4 witnesses to come and speak that day?
Yes,
they are all confirmed?
Yes, if you're asking me a direct question, yes, we do. The 4 are confirmed. I was going to announce who they are. We can do that later on as we towards the end of the meeting. We may not get time for it, but each party has put forward a name and they have confirmed for Monday.
Okay.
Now I see Mr. Reyes.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to point something out following Mr. Housefather's comments, just to complete them. With all due respect I have for him regarding the motion that we unanimously voted on, the motion says to suspend clause-by-clause consideration of C10 until 1 and 2 of his motion were completed. We all agreed that both ministers had to come and meet with us, which the Minister of Justice has up to date refused to do. And I went even further. I took the trouble before we voted to ask for clarification. Everyone gave the affirmative to say that we would hear from both ministers before the witness panel. With that said, I'm not necessarily saying that we should cancel Monday. We should decide on that together. But I did take the trouble to clarify before we voted. So I want to hear from everyone and we can make a friendly agreement. But those were the conditions to break through that impasse, and today we're at another impasse. 2 weeks ago, we started this situation that led to the motion on Monday. I was convinced that we would hear from both ministers today, on Monday, the witness panel, and that we'd be able to move forward, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the conversation. I think the deputy minister here is a very learned person, but she made one critical statement, that whatever this document that was provided was, it was approved by the minister. The buck stops there. That's why it's critical. It's critical as the minister is the person that we meet with. And I think that's why we're unanimous. He approved this document. Somebody else may have written it, but it's under his signature. So that's why it's critical, very critical, that he is the person who then speaks with us, answers our questions as we unanimously asked for. As the deputy minister said, it's under his approval. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brusen.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify on the wording of the motion, just because we can have the conversation about how the committee feels about the attendance of the Minister of Justice. But as far as fulfilling the needs of the motion itself, it was to ask for the revised charter statement, which we have, and to invite the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Canadian Heritage, which has been done. So 1 and 2 have in fact been fulfilled on the wordings of the motion, but just to put that there, because the argument was made that the motion parts 1 and 2 had not been fulfilled.
Thank you, Mr. Brusen. Before we go any further, I'm kind of editing in my mind how this works. If we get to testimony, I could ask Ms. Drouin, she can put away her notes. We'll probably just go directly to questions and comments, given the time constraints. Mr. Aitchison, you have the floor.
I just got to say that Mr. Person made some very strange comments. I'm not about to cast aspersions on her social skills, but when you invite somebody somewhere, it's because you actually want them to show up. The purpose of inviting someone is not just to go through the exercise of inviting them. So I think it's a little disingenuous to suggest for 1 second that, oh, we've invited him, so that's all we need to do. Let's carry on. That's the most ridiculous thing I think I've heard yet today.
Okay. All right. Now that the list has been exhausted, we now go to, before we go to that, folks, at this point, there is no motion to deal with it. There's just a lively discussion about it. I will proceed with Monday, where we do have our 4 experts on the panel. If we want to take up this discussion again, I think we probably should. Maybe we can have a good think about it on the weekend and we can come back with it on Monday, and I receive your direction as how you wish to proceed. Yes, it is true. It is true the motion does invite the Minister of Justice to arrive. He is not here. And now we have to measure the intent of that. And I'm asking everyone to help me out to try to find a solution. But in the meantime, I will proceed to invite the 4 witnesses on Monday, unless a motion tells me otherwise. Mr. Waugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the solution for us today.
Thank God.
I know it's Friday, right? That we propose another invitation be sent to the Justice Minister, and that we postpone the guests that we have here today until Tuesday or Wednesday, when the Minister of Justice can come to committee. I think we all agree that we'd like to hear from him. And so if we can do that, I'll propose that as a committee, we send another invitation to the Justice Committee, and thus we postpone the guests that we have here today until they can come with the minister.
I think you mean the Justice Minister. Is that correct?
The Justice Minister. I was wrong, yes.
Just so that everyone, you're putting a motion on the floor, is correct? The motion states, and I'll paraphrase here, Mr. Waugh, for the sake of time, that you extend an invitation to the Minister of Justice to appear before the committee. Did you say Tuesday or Tuesday and Wednesday?
Yeah, Tuesday or Wednesday, along with department officials.
Correct. That's usually taken for granted, though, Mr. Waugh. We usually, when we invite a minister, officials accompany them. Does everybody understand the motion that is now on the floor? I assume you're done talking about it, Mr. Waugh. I think it's pretty straightforward.
It is
that we extend an invitation to the minister to appear either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week following the expert panel. Ms. de Brusen.
Right. I just wanted to clarify to make sure, was that after the expert panel on Monday?
Yes. Yes, that is correct. I think I can clarify that, Mr. Waugh. Yes.
Perfect. Thank
you. Okay, Ms. McPherson. You're on mute, Ms. McPherson. Sorry. Start again.
It was really compelling what I said, and you missed it. It's too bad. I just wondered whether or not we couldn't put a time constraint on that. My worry always is that we get bogged down and don't do the work that we need to do. Would Mr. Waugh be willing to accept a limit in how long we postpone, regardless?
Well, I think, if I may, Mr. Waugh, with your, I think what he's saying is he's extending an invitation for Tuesday or Wednesday, and I think that's where it ends. So I think there is an implied limitation within that, if I'm reading this correctly.
If that's clear, then that.
Okay,
Perfect.
Mr. Waugh, can I get a quick clarification from you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Very
we
quickly.
would like him before the panel, but I think we put the cart before the horse here, because some experts on the panel.
Mr. Waugh, I'm sorry. I have to give Mr. Reyes the floor if it's appointed debate.
Yeah,
I'm just going to clarify.
Yeah, I agree.
Tuesday or Wednesday?
Well,
okay,
either
great.
or. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Reyes.
Merci.
Thank you. To tie it into what Ms. McPherson was saying, the longest delay would be that we can't move on until the minister appears. So if the minister wants for us to move ahead, then the minister will come and testify. It's clearly written in our motion that we wouldn't go ahead with clause by clause until both ministers show up to committee. So I think that that's the best timeline. It's very tight.
Ms. Harder?
Thank you, Chair. So just for further point of clarification then, just to make sure that we don't have to walk around this again. Look, I would offer a friendly amendment to my my colleague's motion, and that is that the minister would come before the expert panel and before Wednesday, that he would come, that he would appear, that he would testify, not just be invited.
Yeah, I'm hesitating because now let's bear in mind the amendment has to be in line with what was originally proposed. I'm not sure. I'm going to seek some expert advice.
Point of order.
Yeah, one moment, Mr. Housefather. Yeah, we can't. Are you asking to compel attendance here, Ms. Harder? Because we can't do that, right?
I'm simply saying that in order for us to move forward with hearing from other witnesses, and of course to move on to clause by clause, the minister would need to come testify.
Right. If you're moving an amendment, I have to quickly check to see.
Point of order.
Mr. Housefather.
Ms. Harder is not a member of the committee. All 4 conservative members are here. She cannot propose an amendment to the motion.
Oh, that is right.
You.
I'm sorry. Where do I see? 1 second. Yes, you are correct. Thank you, Mr. Housefather. There you are, Mr. Shields. All right. So yes, I'm sorry, Ms. Harder, but you're unable to move an amendment. Thank you. Mr. Aitchison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I propose an amendment that to this motion that that it actually read that the minister actually appear before the committee as opposed to just inviting him?
I'm sorry. Everyone probably heard that, but me, because could you repeat that one more time? I apologize.
I will propose a motion that an amendment to Mr. Waugh's motion that that the Minister of Justice actually appear before the committee and testify before we continue with clause by clause.
Are you saying that you want to invite the minister? Because you can't, the wording you use compels him to come here, but we can't do that.
If I may, Mr. Chair, what I'm saying is we're not issuing a subpoena to the Minister of Justice. We're saying that we won't continue with clause by clause until he comes. If that compels the government to send him, or if that compels Mr. Guilbeault to get on the phone and say, "Help me out, you're my partner in whatever here, come." But I think it compels the government to be a little more engaged with us on this issue.
Okay, Mr. Reyes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we have to do it, we will. But I think it's pretty special that we have to be so specific in our wording. Again, I would like to say that I referred to the blues and I took the trouble to put the question to all committee members on Monday. Everyone acquiesced. Before the vote, I explicitly asked the question to ensure that I was properly understanding, to confirm that we would hear both ministers before the experts. No one objected. No one made a single comment. I even highlighted that everyone was nodding yes, even you, Mr. Chair, with all due respect. So I know I'm repeating it, but I want to emphasize this in front of everyone that we agreed on this. I have the blues in front of me. I can send it to everyone if you have any doubts, even though you already have copies. I just wanted to specify that, Chair.
Mr. Reyes, just for a point of clarification, I understand what you are saying. And if the understanding from everybody was that they would both appear along with the charter statement, that is true. But the remedy you are seeking is one that I cannot provide, which means that you're compelling the minister to be here, and I cannot do that. We as a committee cannot do that. So I appreciate that as a point of debate. But right now, we're still on the motion from Mr. Watt. So Ms. McPherson.
Mr. Chair, this is challenging for me to keep track of all the different sub-amendments and amendments being put forward. Is there any chance for us to get this in writing? And I realize we are running out of time. I'd be happy to stay longer in this committee meeting, but if there is any chance for us to get that sent out to all of the members of the committee so that we can reflect upon it and then come back in even 2 minutes would be helpful.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll suspend literally like 2 minutes if you wish to gather your thoughts. 2 minutes, folks, suspension.
Once we have
need to ask you a question then, Mr. Chair. My amendment spoke specifically to not proceeding with clause by clause until we see the minister or hear the minister at the committee. Does that compel him? Would you rule that a motion that compels him to do something he doesn't want to do, or does it compel us to? Sorry.
You can make an amendment that states that, if I get this right, what you want to do is you want to delay all this until the minister arrives.
Yes.
All right. You want to delay C10. You want to delay the expert panel.
Yes, until we hear from the minister.
All right. Does everyone hear the amendment clearly? Extend an invitation for Tuesday or Wednesday, and we do not continue with C10 until said minister arrives. Mr. Housefather.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would have agreed, and I do agree with Mr. Waugh's original motion. I do not agree with Mr. Aitchison's amendment. We have a panel of 4 people who are very busy, highly respected, influential people that have put time in their schedule aside to come on Monday. I don't believe that anything justifies delaying that expert panel on Monday. I am totally comfortable with an invitation that says the Minister of Justice should be asked again, re-invited by the committee to come on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. It is perfectly within the purview of the committee at that point, if the Minister of Justice doesn't come, to not proceed by clause by clause. If you know, nothing that we say today binds us next Tuesday. So even if we were to adopt Mr. Aitchison's amendment today, it wouldn't stop anyone from putting forward a motion after the expert panel on Monday to proceed with clause by clause. Let's see what happens. Let's agree to invite the minister for Tuesday or Wednesday. Let's proceed with the panel on Monday. The chair will tell us on Monday what the status is of the minister's invitation after the expert panel, and then we'll decide what more we need to do or not do. But I think we have consensus to proceed. I thought we had consensus to proceed with the expert panel on Monday, invite the minister for Tuesday or Wednesday, and then it's always up to the committee at that time what they choose to do. And our conservative colleagues have shown us that they can delay meeting after meeting after meeting anyways if they don't want to proceed. So I don't think the amendment is necessary. I think, again, I think there is a consensus on Mr. Waugh's motion. We're at 3 o'clock. My suggestion is, Mr. Chair, that if Mr. Aitchison perhaps would withdraw the amendment, we adopt Mr. Waugh's motion, we do the expert panel on Monday, and we see then what happens with the minister's response to our invitation, which if we finish early enough, perhaps the clerk can send out this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Did I hear were you directly asking a question to Mr. Aitchison? Okay, you weren't?
Unless Mr. Chair, you tell me that Mr. Aitchison has the ability personally to withdraw his amendment. I think once it's on the floor, the committee has to agree unanimously to withdraw it because it's no longer his. So then I don't have a question to Mr. Aitchison. I would suggest that if my colleagues agree, it should be removed or voted against so we can proceed to Mr. Waugh's motion. Thank you, sir.
Well, we can proceed to the vote if you wish, but I see a lot of hands up right now. Mr. Champoux.
Mr. Chair, I also thought that we had some kind of consensus around Mr. Waugh's motion, which seemed very reasonable to me. I think we should, again, send an invitation to the minister. I think that that message should be sent to him about the urgency of the situation and the precarity into which he is throwing this committee's work by refusing his visit. I would really like to have a compromise. As Mr. Housefather said, these are very credible witnesses. That's why we chose them. And I also agree with Mr. Waugh. I think we should go back to that motion, receive the witness panel Monday, cross our fingers for the minister on Tuesday. I will fall out of my chair if he doesn't come on Tuesday. I don't understand.
Mr. Brusen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see that it's now past 3 o'clock. Correct. And I move to adjourn.
Okay. We now have a motion to adjourn. Does everybody understand what that means? Great. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Housefather.
Mr. Chair, I thought that once we got to the end of the clock at 3, when it's the end of the meeting, that we don't actually need a full vote. We just adjourn.
No, you don't, Mr. Brusen, but it's always implied consent that we adjourn. But quite frankly, it's the call of the chair to see that this consent is not implied as we are in the middle of doing something. I'm afraid you're going to have to make it a little more formal than that.
All right.
Ms. McPherson.
Sorry, I'm assuming right now we're just debating the adjournment. And so if that's the case.
No. I don't think Ms. DeBrusen moved an adjournment motion. Is that correct, Ms. DeBrusen? Right. Okay. So Ms. McPherson.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I also, in a very, very cross-partisan way, support Mr. Waugh's motion, Mr. Housefather's rationale, and Mr. Champoux's process on it. I think that I would be very supportive of having our expert panel on Monday and then having the minister join us on Tuesday. I think that is an excellent compromise that will allow us to continue to do the work that we need to do. So that will be where my support would land. And it's very cross-partisan to be collective and collaborative together.
Now, Mr. Brusen, your hand is up. I gather that's from the last time. So I'm going to, okay, Mr. Waugh.
Well, very quickly, Mr. Chair. Can I ask to suspend? That way we can continue this debate during our next meeting, which whenever that is next week.
Well, the issue with that is we start out with it. We do have witnesses coming on Monday, so that becomes a little bit problematic. If you want to proceed to, I see that there's nobody wants to talk, so we can go to a vote, or except Mr. Aitchison wishes to talk. Mr. Aitchison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for wishing to talk. I thought actually that what I heard all across party lines, including from my dear friend Mr. Housefather, was eminently reasonable, and so I will actually withdraw my sub amendment if that makes everybody happier, and we can proceed back to Mr. Waugh's motion. Clearly, he is a far more seasoned veteran at this and more knowledgeable, better looking, all those good things, and makes more sense. So.
I'm beginning to think you write as householder, Mr. Aitchison, with all due respect. Okay, seeing that we have unanimous consent across the board. Right. So now we go to the main motion, which is put forward by Mr. Waugh to extend the invitation to the Minister of Justice to arrive either Tuesday or Wednesday, and we continue with Monday's witness testimony for the 4 expert panel. Seeing no debate, all those in favor.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify, if you can read it to me again, I want to make sure I understand what exactly it is about.
I tell you, honestly, things are happening so fast, Mr. Brusen. Yes, I appreciate that because I'm going to go to the clerk because that's why I'm paraphrasing. I'm going to go to the clerk to also repeat what I said about the motion at hand, which is from Mr. Waugh. Madam Clerk.
And Mr. Waugh, please do correct me to make sure that I have this written down properly. Propose another invitation be sent to the Justice Minister and officials. That's where it was said a couple of different ways. So propose another invitation be sent to the Justice Minister and officials for either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. The days will be put in when the minutes are written. And continue with the expert panel on Monday, May 17th.
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have a general understanding now. Let's proceed to the vote. All in favor of the motion from Mr. Waugh? Anybody opposed, as we now do in virtual world? I see nobody opposed. Passed. Remember what I said earlier about implied consent? Let me return to that. It is now 6 minutes past our expiry, pardon the expression. So I'm going to be so bold as to say that the meeting is now adjourned and we'll be back on Monday. Madam Clerk, could you just mention who we have as witnesses, please?
Yes, sir. We have Janet Yale, we have Pierre Trudel, we have Dr. Michael Geist, and Andrew Cash.
All good. Ladies and gentlemen, have yourselves a wonderful weekend. Adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.